Okay, we are back live with another Between the Pages book chat, and today we have fantasy author Michael Ross here to talk about his series, The Wand Chronicles. And I'm going to turn it over to him now and let him introduce himself. So take it away.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Ross. I'm, as was told, I'm an epic fantasy author. I am a multi-genre author, but it's the fantasy, epic fantasy that has really caught my, always been a part of my life. I have to admit this to you, so please don't turn off, but I've still got the mind of a 6-year-old boy. So the imagination in me is always dying to come out. Plus, my background is that of an actor. And quite a few years ago, I went to see a clairvoyant, whether you believe them or not, but she kept grabbing me by the shoulder and saying, "You have to write." I said, "What do you mean, write? Write what?" She said, "Books. You've got to write." So I did do. And that's how it started for me, my little visit to a clairvoyant. Anyway, coming on to the Wand Chronicles. I wanted to try to imagine what would happen slightly in the future. We're talking 2087 now. What would happen if we, the humans, met elves for the first time? Now, bearing in mind that the elves have been around for about 3.5 million years longer than we have, they're obviously quite evolved in many ways. So as humans, you know what we're like with the politics and power grabbing and the way we treat our planet and so on. The elves were getting quite perturbed. They knew about us, but hadn't actually met us or integrated with us. So even probably a mile from where I live, it's unbelievable, a portal suddenly appeared and elves met humans for the first time. To the elves, we are just bumbling humans, really. We really didn't know what we were doing, a little bit like headless chickens. But very slowly, we started to integrate with the elves, and they were passing on some of their tricks. For example, I don't know if you guys have heard of ley lines, but they, quite a few hundred years ago, they were really important in not my part of the world, which is the UK, and in France and other parts of Europe. So I started to bring that in. The elves live in a kingdom called Laniakea, but it's huge. I mean, it's absolutely massive. So their way of traveling around the whole of their sort of kingdom is to use ley lines. So I tried to bring in things from the past that could feel realistic. And of course, they were trying to show the humans how to do it, which we started to get the hang of. But the whole crux of the story is that we've got a wand. They've got a wand. It's called Elvina. Now, Elvina isn't just a little piece of stick or anything. It's a sentient being, this wand. And she will integrate with whoever is trying to use it and melds in with the arm. And it is tremendous, tremendous power. And when you have something like that with such tremendous power, then everybody in the whole of the cosmos wants it, don't they? That's the way it works, really. So we start to get really integrated with the elves, and we join them on adventures, many of them to try to stop all sorts of weird and wonderful species trying to steal the wand. But, you know, I've always believed that humor can be in there, even in the darkest moments. And I have a Chinese guy in it called Dingling. And he always comes out and provides a little bit of humor every so often, which I think is part of the process. It's quite an interesting one. And also I explore what would happen if an elf and a human had a child. And that happens as well. And we get a girl called Kier, who's half elvish, and she's a half human. And she becomes one of the most powerful empaths in the cosmos, as it happens. But I was saying to Anita earlier on, can you imagine a 13, 14-year-old human girl who's going through the whole idea of growing up and all the moods that some of them can have mixed with magical abilities? So her human father doesn't stand a chance when she's having an argument with him. She can just lift him off the ground and he's floundering around like a fish out of water. So there are also serious moments in it as well. We have a species in there called the Crandokral, and she goes wandering into an area that she shouldn't have done. It's a big mystical forest. And they then have to make her pay for what she did. She has to have the tip of the right hand, the little finger, has to be amputated and put on with something. So it sounds horrible, but it's all part of the idea of trying to make it as real as possible. And that's, I think, what I've tried to do with the story. I'm what they call a pantser. So I write by the seat of my pants. Listen, I've tried the normal way to planning it out like most authors do, having a storyline. I can tell you what happens in 10 minutes, beginning, middle, and end, but then you can work out the chapters, work out the characters. I can't do that. I have a map of the Elvish Kingdom, and I've got it on the wall in front of me here, and dotted over it are characters and places on this Elvish Kingdom. And I will sit down, look at one of those, and I will write a book on one of those characters or places, and it all comes out as I do it. The problem is, of course, is I wonder if my writing's any good. You know, it's only after you get a lot of professional reviews and so on saying that it is, luckily, then you think, oh well, this obviously works for me. So yeah, I tend to try to stick to books, all my books, and make them as real as possible. I mean, I'm an actor that believes that I'm a method actor. So if you think of Meryl Streep, for example, so each one of the main human characters I have, I could tell you where they like to go, what they like, where they would like to holiday, what they would like to eat, what papers would they read. I really researched that. So what happens when we come to an elf? But I wanted to give them personalities as well. So, so all of my characters that are prominent in the books that are Elvish, I'd like, if you read them, you might think, oh, actually, that it sounds so realistic. They must exist in a way. So, but it all comes, you know, I have times when you'll need your box of tissues, other times you'll be laughing, and then there's lots of stuff in between. So that was basically the One Chronicles as I started it off. And, you know, we're looking at 400,000 words, so it's quite a big trilogy, if you like.
Okay, so speaking of the characters, tell us a little bit about them, the main characters in the books.
Mm.
What are their flaws, their good points, things like that?
Well, I'll save the really exciting Elvish ones for in a minute, but I have a guy called Hugo Bruff. Hugo is a very young general, and it was Hugo that inadvertently got caught up in this portal where he was introduced to the elves. He's actually a very brave guy, but he works very closely with a little Chinese guy who's his aide, who's called Dingling. Dingling looks after him and gets him out of all sorts of scrapes, but both of them are very brave. So those are two of the main British characters in it. But I also have the father of Hugo. Now, I wanted a character in there that even after the first chapter, you wanted to rip his head off. I mean, you know, seriously, he's such an obnoxious character and you can't believe he's still around. And there's many times when he almost gets his just desserts, but he manages to get away with it. So hopefully it leaves you thinking, come on, you this guy, we've got to catch this guy and do something with him. So I have him running through all the time. Okay, let's go over to the Elvish side. Well, there's a sorceress. She's called Elphistra. She's a very striking being. She can reincarnate. She's covered in very tiny black scales underneath, which is a red color underneath. She's able, obviously, to communicate as a telepath as well. And she doesn't trust the humans. No matter how long the humans have been trying to be nice to us, she's always there in the background. But she slowly starts to respect the humans because some of them do have good hearts. And some of them are able, because of the way they are, to integrate with the powerful wand Elvina. So she's very impressed with this. But she's always, always at the back of your mind. If you were in a room with her now, obviously you know you're human, and she comes in, you'd be sort of wanting to move your back to the wall rather than have it facing her. There's always that underlying suspicion that at the end of the day, she's all elf. We have an amazing queen in it called Haruntha, very, very compassionate person. A lot of the elves are compassionate, you know, they've had time to evolve and realize that tearing each other's throats out is not the way forward. So we have her, but we have some really, again, other species. There's a guy called Randreneth. Randreneth is a warlock. He's a dark, mystical figure. And he's always trying to come back and try to steal this very powerful wand. So those are mainly, together with the daughter, the hybrid daughter. The elf who gave birth to her is called Alana. And Alana and Hugo, the human, fell in love, really, from the word go, really, much to the consternation of all the higher powers that be. But they allowed it to happen. And like I say, they had their first daughter, who was Kia. And Kia is an amazing empath, and which is really helpful to know in times of stress when you're wondering what's going to come onto the scene next.
I imagine. So tell us a little bit about the world. Now you've got the human world and the elven world, but you mentioned other creatures. So are there other worlds? Is it like sort of sci-fi-ish, or is it more like different realms of fantasy?
Well, I call them different. Within the cosmos, you'll get different dimensions. Laniakea is one. The thing with Laniakea, the Elvish kingdom or dimension, is that they can also see and interact with some of the planets that we can see, but in a different way. For example, the planet Saturn comes down so close, it looks like you could touch it. It's just the way physics works in that dimension. And there are others that are completely different, very much more advanced species than we are, and others that are far behind us even. And that's great to let your imagine go to town and come up with species that people are wondering what they are and coming up with. I've got one quite a complicated dimension where I've got three completely distinct species that live in the same place. And in the end, the humans go along to try to be a mediator for all this. And it's very difficult. If you're trying to have a conversation with somebody that looks like an ant, but of course you can feel their intelligence. They're able to send messages by telepathy and so on. So yes, within the cosmos, there are countless numbers of different worlds and dimensions. It's endless. You could just go on and on and on.
Okay. So what was the hardest scene or the hardest type of scene for you to write in the series?
I think I wanted to try to get across that the elvish people were, you see, let's face it, if you look at a human, look at an elf, there's not a lot of difference. They may have pointed ears, they're a little bit taller. All right, so they've got two hearts. They need two hearts. One's for the body. The other one is to keep their brain really well oxygenated, because of course they've got magical abilities. They need their brain to work at full speed there. But I wanted to hypothesize that we could have a species like the elves with their DNA. A lot of it is very similar to ours. So whoever created the cosmos had this little pot of DNA, started off with the elves, and then 3 million years later was seeding our planet, and out we came. And then they want to see how we would evolve and how different we would be. So just trying to get that across in a realistic way, I had to think about.
Okay, so what was your favorite scene or type of scene to write?
All right. Well, you know, my books, I don't have profanity in it and swearing. It's fine for other people and other authors and other books. I don't think it's necessary. In any case, we may say F-U-C-K, but to the elf, it means nothing. They'll have their own type of whatever they want to say. So I kept all that out of it. The other one was, what about raising the ugly head of sex in this thing? And I didn't want that either. So when Hugo, the English general, met Alana and they fell in love, she wanted to take him to a very special Elvis ceremony. It's called the Sutalanash, this ceremony. And it's much more of a spiritual coming together. In many ways, if any of your sort of listeners and readers or whatever, remember the old film Cocoon? There was an old film called Cocoon. If you've not seen it, you must see it. It's a brilliant old film. And so she took him to this beautiful, very relaxing sort of a hut. And in there, she managed to bring her spirit out, which was able to integrate with his. And it was just an amazing experience. Of course, we've got to remember that Hugo is a British man and a human man. Has all the physical needs, and he's wondering when's the best bit going to come. But of course, he realizes then that this is an amazing alternative. That their spiritual being was able to unite, and it felt amazing for them. So I brought things like that into it in a different way into the book.
Interesting, because yeah, I mean the culture and the way things would have evolved might very well have been different. So it was an interesting approach.
Yeah. I mean, I also had, certainly with the books, I didn't want to stop there with the One Chronicles. So I thought, why can't I come up with a board game that goes with the books? And with this board game, you'll have all the main characters involved. So I went on a writer's retreat. That was my excuse for getting away from the family. And I designed a board game. And last year, we took it to one of the biggest board game compendiums in the UK. And it got selected in the top 10 of new board games, which was brilliant, really. So that's also available. And I thought as a little catch, something a little different to go with the One Chronicles board game, for example.
Oh, that sounds cool. Okay, so you also mentioned you're a multi-genre author. So what other genres have you written in, and are there any that you'd like to write in?
Well, let me tell you what I've written. I've written a true life story. Of all the books I've written, that's the one that has traveled around the world and is a bestseller. Of a tragedy that happened to me 14 years ago. I sat down sometime after the event and I didn't plan anything. I just came up with the names of chapters and I'd written it, and that then became the book it is. But it's a very, very positive book. It's called Just 5 More Minutes. And I decided to write that, and that was the very first book I'd written. Then I wrote a comedy. Then I've written a series of children's books for different ages, young adults to sort of young teens and even small children. We've got another best-selling book, which is a bilingual book, which is English and Croatian, called What is a School? Because it must be quite frightening for very small children who are about to go to school, wanting to know what happens when you go to a school. So I wrote this book. I don't speak Croatian, by the way. I'm very typically English and only speak English. But my illustrator, who I've known ever since my first book, is Croatian. So I was due to go over to the school where she teaches, because I got all the children to be involved in the making of the book, which was quite nice, really. So I've written, a true life story, a comedy, various children's books and adventures. Where would I like to go now? Well, I'm into fairies, to be honest with you. I've just started a big series called The Big Fairy Adventures. And it centers around one heroine, one fairy, who I'm afraid to say is a little overweight. She's called Tinker Tanker. She just loves the nectar too much. But she's got a heart of gold, extremely brave. And I'm bringing some of the characters from the One Chronicles into this as well. And I'm having fun writing this because there's a little bit more humor in it than there was in the One Chronicles for me. Where would I like to go next? I would like to go back to writing an out and out. I've written a scary storybook, by the way, and I quite like that. But I think a thriller is something I'd like to think. But I'd have to plan that out more. So I'm not sure if my creativeness could cope with that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I know a couple of thriller writers who are a bit of a pantser, so it's possible.
Oh, well, all right then. Well, I'll get that's definitely on my list. That a thriller and an out and out comedy as well.
Yeah, I think with the thrillers you might have a little more editing though after pantsing it, but
yes, well, I mean exactly. Well, luckily I've got an amazing editor. You see, that's the other thing. A young girl who's got a first class honours in English and doesn't live too far from me. Purely by chance we met, and so she edits my books, and then she sends me a report, which feels like I'm in front of the principal for 2 hours, and she tells me off. And at the end of that, I wonder if actually English is my first language. I'm not sure if it is now, but she's very, very good. And I think for a good editor, they've got to be into your mindset so that they don't disrupt the flow of what you want to put your creativeness into it. And she can do that really well. So I'm quite lucky.
well, it's always lucky to get a good editor.
Mm.
So I think we'll wrap it up here, and
Yeah.
I'll let you tell everyone where they can find you and your books.
Okay. Well, I'm across the whole board, really. I'm on Twitter, also LinkedIn and Instagram and so on. Twitter is @OneChronicles. I've got a website as well, so if anybody would like a free book, all you have to do is get in touch with me. You can download the ebook, or I'll be more than happy to send a signed paperback wherever you are in the world. If you're in a different dimension, there may be problems with the post, but other than that, if it's on this planet, you can get a book. I have a website which is really good to get onto. You can see how everything works, have a look at the board game and so on, and that's www.thewand.me. That's thewand.me. @One Chronicles for Twitter. If you go on Amazon, put Michael Ross in there. I've got an author's page, so you'll be able to find me on there. I think that's it, other than in a program called Crime Watch, apparently somebody mentioned my name and asked me if that was the same person, Michael Ross. It happens to be America's worst serial killer. So I am not that person. I just want to confirm that.
Well, that's always good to confirm you're not a serial killer.
I'm not an axe murderer, I promise.
Okay, so thank you for being here. It was a pleasure chatting with you today.
And it certainly was with you as well. Lovely to meet you, Anita.
Okay, and Between the Pages, we'll be back next weekend with 2 more authors, so join us then. And that's all for now, so bye.
Bye.